بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين المبعوث رحمة للعالمين وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وفقهنا إذا جهلنا وزدنا علما نافعا وعملا متقبلا يا كريم وبعد. Today in this first session that we have, that you have here on fasting in preparation for the month of Ramadan, we're going to cover Ahkam al-Siyam, the rules around fasting of the month of Ramadan. And we should all make our intention that in doing this, we are preparing to fulfill the great obligation of the fast of the month of Ramadan. Because if a person doesn't know how to fulfill an act of worship, an ibadah of Allah, if a person doesn't know how to fulfill, then even if a person gets it right, it may be possible Allah still will not accept that act. So as a way of getting ready for the fast of Ramadan, we need to get ourselves to understand how to fast in the proper manner. And also it helps us because tomorrow is the 15th of Shaban. Tonight and tomorrow is the 15th of Shaban. And in hadith, the Prophet ﷺ spoke about hadith from Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu ardah. He said, if the night of the 15th of Shaban comes upon you, he said, spend the night of it in worship and fast a day. And fast a day of the 15th of Shaban. And by fasting that day of the 15th of Shaban, it increases the possibility and the hope that we have in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that our qadr for the coming year is a good decree with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because that's one of the most significant aspects of this night and the day of Sha'ban is فِيهَا يُفْرَقُ كُلُّ أَمْرٍ حَكِيمٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says every wise matter, wise affair is distributed on that night and on that day. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives the angels everything that's going to happen to us in the coming year. Everything by way of good or bad that will happen to us in the next year is going to happen tonight. The angels receive our decree tonight. So we want to be in a state of worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during the night and during the day of the 15th of Sha'ban in preparation and hope that we will have a good year that comes from that. So this will help us to ensure that our fast tomorrow and in the month of Ramadan is in a good way. I'm going to override what Tahir said. Tahir mentioned for sisters to write the questions, send it forward at the end, and for brothers to wait till the end. That's not how I prefer. My personal preference is that we have, I think, about 7-8 points that we're going to cover around rules of fasting. We'll discuss them point by point. So when we speak about the first point, if there's questions connected to the first point, rather than building them all up towards the end, it maybe helps and makes it better if we discuss it point by point. But the only thing that I ask with that is keep it to the point. Keep it to the point. If something's going to be discussed on point 6, we'll wait till point 6, not at point 1 to discuss it. So we'll take questions point by point, and if there's anything that's left or any general questions, then we can discuss it at the end. We're looking at page 5 on these handouts that you have. You turn to page 5, because the other points of spirituality of Ramadan and Quran in the month of Ramadan, you're going to have separate sessions that will deal with that. We have the verse of fasting, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. Surah Al-Baqarah 183. There's about 5 verses in the Quran that speak about the fast of the month of Ramadan, and that's the key ayah that begins that discussion. It mentions that these are just some background points, that the order of fasting the month of Ramadan was set upon the believers in the 2nd year after Hijrah. Prior to that, before that, there was no fard fasting, although the first year what was fard upon the companions was to fast the Yom of Ashura, the 10th of Muharram, which is sunnah for us to fast. For the first year it was obligatory fard upon the companions to fast that. But then when the ayah of fasting the month of Ramadan came, then that was dropped down to being nafil. It became nafil and it was no longer fard. So from the 2nd year after the migration, after the Hijrah, fasting was made fard upon all the believers. The first point number 1, fasting the month of Ramadan is a personal obligation. Personal obligation is what we call fard ayn. Fard ayn means that every single Muslim aqil baligh, every single sane adult Muslim, must fast the fast of Ramadan. No excuse that goes, or no reason other than what we will discuss. There are reasons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave that allow not to fast. But beyond that, there's no excuse that will be accepted. If a person is defined as somebody who has to fast, that he's a sane, adult, resident, healthy, she's not menstruating, she's not pregnant, all of these are in place, and that person decides not to fast, and it's considered one of the worst crimes that there is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But a person for no reason just decides, I'm not going to fast. In a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, a person who misses a day of Ramadan without a valid reason, without an excuse, even if he was to fast for eternity, will not compensate for that one day. Even if he was to fast forever, would not compensate for that one day. So even though if you do miss, you still got to do qada, you've got to make it up. Nothing will ever replace one day of Ramadan if it's gone. Nothing will ever. We can even say the same about prayers. Like the prayers within its time, if you miss it, you still got to make them up, but nothing will replace that prayer that you missed. Prayer has to be in time. Fasting has to be in time. So it's the highest degree of obligation. It comes after prayer and zakah. Prayer and zakah are the highest obligations. There's no higher fard from the arkan al-Islam, the pillars of Islam, than prayer and zakah. Prayer and zakah are the highest level. Then after that, your sawm comes into place. Then after that, your fasting comes into place. So it's personal obligation, and personal obligation also means that you are responsible for the sin if you do not do it without valid reason, but you will receive the reward if you did it. Nobody else is responsible. You get your own reward, you carry your own sin. So fasting is of that type. What's also important to add here, at what age does a person have to start fasting? The latest age is 15 years old. Latest is 15 years old. And 15 is lunar years. It's roughly about 14, just less than 40, around 14 years of age by the calendar that we work. But 15 years old is the latest. The earliest for a boy could potentially be 12, for a girl 9. Depends. For a girl, if she has a menstruation and she becomes an adult. With a boy, if he has an emission, like a wet dream, then he becomes an adult. But the latest, it will be 15. So if somebody's turned 15 is now an adult, and like teenagers are teenagers. Teenagers they just want to rebel against everything. But if you rebel against your parents, it's one thing. You don't want to rebel against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rebelling against parents is one thing. Rebelling against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something very different. And the fact that we may still consider them kids does not mean that they're kids with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even though like parents will treat their 16-year-old and 17-year-olds as kids, they are, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're grown adults. They have to fulfill the obligation. What may make it slightly more difficult is because we have very long fasts. We have very long fasts, and some parents will start looking at their little kids who are still 16, grown men now, but they're still little kids, and saying, you can't fast. If they are children in school, like in Sheffield, when I did this class in Sheffield, some young lads, school kids, like about 10-year-old, like, we want to fast, but we got PE and teacher won't let us fast, and we got a long day. Kids are still kids, they're young. And if it's going to cause extreme difficulty upon them, then it's a different discussion. But an adult is an adult, and an adult has to fast. The moment they reach puberty, no excuse not to fast. And as a father and as a mother, you should be training your children, preparing them for the fast. Not when they turn 15, bam, now you need to start fasting, and they've never fasted the day before. Or you haven't prepared them for a longer fast. You haven't got them used to the idea of a longer fast. So the obligation is from puberty. The moment they become adults, they have an obligation upon them. So, any questions on point 1? Any questions on point 1? Yeah?
So when you're saying puberty for a boy, are you talking about, like you said, from...
At the latest 15. Yeah.
Ejaculation is classed as puberty then?
Yeah. From the first point he has a wet dream, then yeah, he's an adult. And for a girl, the first point she has a menstruation, she's an adult. Yeah. And from that point onwards, see, before that, if he was a child, and didn't do it, there's no sin. There may be sin upon the parents for not getting them used to it. But if he's like a 10-year-old and he hasn't, because 12 is the earliest that a boy will become an adult. He's 10 years old and he hasn't fasted, there's no sin. Doesn't pray, there's no sin. But there's blame upon the parent who's not training them to fast or to pray. Allahu Akbar. Yeah?
Sorry, what's the recommendation in the training and how do you train?
You start getting, like the Prophet ﷺ gave us with prayer from the age of 7, that you start ordering them to pray and you discipline them from the age of 10. Same thing with fasting. Maybe not a full day because it's too long. But you start getting them used to the idea. Maybe just the occasion nafil fasts. The whole month of Ramadan may be too difficult because where we're at. But just start getting them used to the idea, that make it enjoyable to them, like make it something that's fun for them. But just get them used to the idea of fasting. It's something that shouldn't be strange for them, from a younger age. Allahu Akbar. Anything else? Any other questions on that? Okay, the second point. The month of Ramadan. This is the controversial point. We got one controversial point, one confusing point. The controversial point is, when do we start fasting? When does Ramadan start? Because Muslims argue about this all the time. When does Ramadan start? And usually when you have controversy or confusion, it's because people don't know. Because usually the people who argue about things haven't sat down and bothered to learn about it. And those who actually know and they're taking it properly will not engage in arguments. So the first controversial point, like, you have simple statements, and really it is just simple-minded. If we're all Muslims, we're all one faith, we're all one religion, we've all got one Quran, we've all got one Prophet, then how can we have 2 days of Ramadan? And worse than that, how can we have 2 Eids? That's too simple-minded, and people should understand it's simple-minded. And people should not be assuming that everything is one, because if it was, even the statement Quran is one, yes, it's one. It came from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Jibreel, Prophet, but there were 7 different ways the Prophet was allowed to read it. He was taught 7 different ways of reading it. And we have what's called al-qira'at al-ashr, the 10 different ways of reading the Quran. One word in the Quran, like ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim with the sad, can be read with the sin and the zay. And same word, ihdina as-sirata, ihdina az-zirata. Same word. Kufuwan can be kufu'an or kuf'an. Same word. Maliki can be maliki. Maliki yawmiddin can be maliki. Same Quran we're reading. Exactly the same Quran we're reading. So when people say should only be one, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't put it that way. He gave scope for a difference. And when people say prayer should only be one, the Prophet didn't put it that way. He gave scope for people to be different. So what we should understand, that differences is not wrong, it's something that's essential to our religion. Differences. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, وَلَوْ شَاءَ رَبُّكَ لَجَعَلَ النَّاسَ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً وَلَا يَزَالُونَ مُخْتَلِفِينَ. If your Lord had willed, He would have all made you one people. Exactly same, no differences in language and colour, no differences once, we're all one. But you still would have argued. وَلَا يَزَالُونَ مُخْتَلِفِينَ. If you look at Siamese twins, they're exactly the same, but they're still different. They're still different. It's something inherent within human beings that there's differences. What is it that we do not accept and we do not tolerate? It's differences in the heart. It's where you despise and dislike and hate and speak down against people because they do something different to you. We must tolerate differences, we must respect differences. The Prophet ﷺ did not close off differences, but what he did, and he had no tolerance for, was when they started falling out amongst each other. We must respect differences amongst people. We have 4 madhabs in fiqh, we have 2 madhabs in aqeedah, we have different turuq in tasawwuf, we have different ways in every aspect of our religion. In aqeedah we have 2 different understandings, in fiqh we have 4 different understandings, in spirituality we have different pathways back to the Prophet ﷺ. There is no one in everything. There is no one in everything. Everything is different. So that even when we talk about when does Ramadan begin, it should not trouble us if there's 2 different days. It should not trouble us if there's 2 different days. What should trouble us is the fact that people argue about it and don't know anything about it. They argue despite not knowing anything about it. They're not willing to sit and listen. So here, when we actually look at the issue, you have many different ways now people go with their fasting. Easiest thing, if you've not really learnt anything, just to save any problems, the easiest thing is just go with your local mosque. That's the easiest thing in the world. Just go with whatever your local mosque is doing. It'll save you so many problems. But it's just in terms of fahm, in terms of understanding, people have different ways. Often people just phone back home and see what they're doing back home. Many Muslims now, in a lot of different countries, even in Muslim countries, Saudi Arabia, whatever Saudi Arabia does, we'll follow that. Some Muslim countries now, calculating it, without actually looking for the new moon, calculating it. The problem we have here in England, and every Ramadan will always have this problem, is that we cannot see the new moon here. We're too far north. It's impossible for us to see the new moon here. In some cities, they'll go out onto the mountaintops and they'll just look, just for the sake of what they call iqamat sunnah, just to carry out a sunnah, knowing full well that they're not going to be able to see it. Knowing full well. And that's a separate issue. The point being here, we have nothing here by which we can know, so we have to rely on something else. We mentioned some of the different ways. In terms, the simple solution, we refer back to what did the Mujtahid Imams guide us on this. That's our reference point. Quran and Sunnah as understood and explained to us by the Mujtahid Imams. And we have 4 Imams of guidance that we take our guidance from. And we notice within them there's only 2 real opinions. 2 opinions. And we should really be only going with one of those 2 opinions. The majority, including Abu Hanifa, including Malik and including Ahmed, 3 out of the 4, they said what's called Ikhtilaf al-Matali'. Ikhtilaf al-Matali' is what we refer to now as global sighting. And what global sighting means, anywhere in the world that the new moon is sighted and it's confirmed and it's verified by authorities, then the whole of the ummah has to fast. Everybody has to fast. Because of the words of the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Sumu li ru'yatihi wa aftiru li ru'yatihi. Fast when you see the new moon and finish the month when you see the new moon. Anywhere in the world. If, for example, the first place is Morocco, Muslims verified, has to be verified. It can't just be somebody went out, said I've seen it, and everybody goes with it. It has to be verified by authorities. And that's one of the problems now. We always get early sightings, which are valid sightings, but not usually verified sightings, like in places like Chile, South America, because the moon first arises around the Pacific and South American regions. But as an example, if a Muslim in Fiji, for example, saw the new moon, we couldn't go with that. Why? Because there's no system of verification. It has to be referred to ulama, who've got to accept that he's a credible witness, that he's a valid witness. So it has to be a credible, verified sighting anywhere in the world. That's what we call global sighting. That's the Hanafi madhab, that's the Hanbali madhab, and that's the Maliki madhab. Imam al-Shafi'i rahimahullah, however, he had ittihad al-matali'. Ittihad al-matali' is the first. Ikhtilaf al-matali'. Each region has its own sighting. Each area has its own sighting. So as an example, Pakistan, for example, they have their own moon sighting committee with the ulama on it. And if it's sighted, they'll go with it. If it's not, they will not rely on anywhere else. That's a perfectly valid way of doing it. Because people will say, how come they're doing it a day late? How come they're doing it a day late? They have their own system in place, and it's perfectly acceptable. You're not bound, according to a second opinion, you're not bound by any other place. The first opinion, everybody has to fast. The second opinion, local, regional. It's regional. They're the 2 sound opinions. They are the 2 sound opinions. The other opinions, such as astronomical calculation, meaning it will be calculated based on astronomical data when should the new moon be seen first. And whether it's seen or not, we'll go with that. That will be announced as the first day. That opinion holds no weight in Sharia, because the Prophet ﷺ said, Sumu li ru'yatihi, fast when you see the new moon. Ru'ya, it must be seen. It must be seen with the eye. It can be a telescope, it can be binoculars. That's fine, but the eye must see it. The eye must see it. So just calculating it and saying it should be born at this place, that's not sufficient. That's not enough. And although there are some Muslim countries that do that, that's not considered valid. What definitely has no weight is to fix a particular place. Because now across the Ummah, most Muslim countries are going with Saudi Arabia. That itself is an innovation in religion. That itself is an innovation in religion. We find no evidence for that from the Quran, from the Sunnah, from the Salaf of this Ummah, from the early Muslims. None of the Mujtahid Imams pinpointed that you must go with the Haramain because it's the centre of the Ummah. None of them ever went with that opinion. They said global sighting, local sighting. They're the two sound opinions that are recorded based upon their understanding of the Hadith. However, at the end of that, because most people go with that, the Saudi sighting, most people go with that. If people want to do that, leave people to do whatever they want. The important point is nobody should impose on others. Nobody should impose on others. You recognise, you understand that there's no basis in that within Sharia. But if people, if for example you're in a community where everybody's doing that, then your hands are tied. Your hands are tied. And even though you may understand it to be wrong, you have no other option but to do that. But the ideal is to do either global sighting or regional sighting. Regional sighting for us, the nearest Muslim country that has a verified system is Morocco. And that's why some ulama here in England, some mosques will go with Morocco. They will go with Morocco. And that's perhaps the easiest way of doing it here. Allahu Akbar. So what's become a very controversial issue is not controversial. It's just because emotions have come into play. That's ultimately, when you speak to people, why must we follow Saudi Arabia? It becomes a very emotional issue. It shouldn't be that. As Sharia is not based on human emotion. It's based upon the message that the Prophet ﷺ came as understood by Imams.
Alhamdulillah, brother. Technology is a gift from God.
Yeah.
So why don't we rely on technology?
Most of the ulama will not go with that because of the direct wording of the Prophet ﷺ. He ﷺ says, "Sumu li ru'yatihi." Those who argue for it said, "Ru'ya here means yaqeen," when you have certainty, whatever the way the certainty is. And in their times, the only way that they had was sighting. That's the argument that's used by those who will say use technology in place of it. But the majority of the ulama will not accept that because the Prophet ﷺ said human sighting must be used. So if you mean technology like astronomical calculations, that's what most of the ulama reject. If you mean technology using like optical aids, some of them will allow that, some of them don't. Like the Shafi'i ulama, they don't allow it. The Hanafi ulama, they allow it. If you're talking about using telescopes and binoculars, the Hanafi ulama, they allow it, but some don't allow that. Wallahu a'lam. Any other questions on that?
You follow Hanafi, but then at the same time, we still get that divide where one will be starting Ramadan early, and some will start late at the same time.
So yeah, I mean, if it's in the same town, the problem really is when it's in the same family. That's where it shouldn't really happen. If a mosque down the road is doing on one day, the other one is doing, just let people be. And especially even fasting, like for example, like if maybe it's not an issue here, but let's say for example in Liverpool, all the mosques have tied themselves to Saudi Arabia. They're going to go with that, whatever. But let's say for example, like you don't agree with that. Fasting is your own personal. Nobody can impose when you have to fast. Eid is the issue. Eid is the issue. Eid is a family issue. And it's not really it's community, but as long as a family you're celebrating it together, then so be it. If the other mosque is doing a different day, just let them be. No need to argue about it. But we shouldn't break up families for the sake of these issues, and we should just let go of it, even though you may be convinced it's not right. You should just let go of it and accept that there's a difference of opinion in these matters. Wallahu a'lam. But again, the point, when fasting, you can fast yourself. It's Eid, that's the problem.
That was my follow-up question.
Yeah, so inshallah. If it's going to cause a divide in the family, you should never get to that point. You should just back down and just recognise that there are differences on these points. Wallahu a'lam. Any other questions on that? Yeah.
Sure, just a little bit off topic. What about Eid al-Adha then? Because there's an argument that say that the day of Arafah is one, Hajj is the day after, Eid is the day after. And that should be a global.
It may sound surprising, but again, that's not a point that's agreed upon. Like in people's minds, Eid al-Adha is the day of Hajj, Yawm al-Nasik, the 10th of Al-Hijjah. So in people's minds, how can you be doing a day later or a day earlier or how can you be doing Eid on the Hujjaj Arafah? It's a day too early. But again, we have, if you read into the books of fiqh, some of the imams, they tied it into Hajj, but others said, no, it's not about Hajj. Hajj is for those at Hajj. As opposed to those who are not there, it's not that they must follow that. Those who are not at Hajj, they have their own obligation, which is Udhiyah or Qurbani. That's their obligation. On the day of Eid, you have to sacrifice. And that's not necessarily tied in. That's not necessarily tied. So again, we have a difference of opinion. There are some, even within the Hanif method, there's a dispute. Do we still work on global sighting, or is it regional sighting? But what they did not say clearly in the Hanafi method is that you must follow what the Hujjaj are doing. That's not clearly stated there. So again, people are thinking now, and see the issue why is because you've got it beamed into your homes now. You're watching Hajj going on. That never used to happen before. And that's why people are getting so worked up about it. It wasn't a problem before because people weren't seeing Hajj going on. But now you're watching it, it's like, how are we doing Eid and they're on Arafah? Again, it's simple-minded. It's just simple. People are not looking at the actual arguments for and against it. They just come to their own simple conclusions on it. Wallahu a'lam.
Shaykh, you mentioned about families doing Eid together. So which way should you actually go? Should you go on the way that this is calculated, so we should fast 30 days? Or should you then, for the sake of family unity, miss a fast on the basis of what you said earlier on, that you're never going to be able to make that up?
If it's going to cause a problem, a significant problem in the family, then miss a fast and go with the other opinions. If it's not going to cause a problem, then it's going to cause a problem. So just it never doesn't cause a problem, and it's always going to be uncomfortable in a household where half of them are doing Eid on one day and half are doing another day. But if it's not going to cause a problem, then do what you consider to be right and what you're going with. Allahu a'lam. Khalid.
I thought, I can understand with the Ramadan, but with Hajj, the whole thing about Hajj is the actual participation and the actual act that you're doing. So
no, that's for the Hujjaj, but again, the point being, there's no evidence that states that your Eid must be tied into that. There's no clear evidence that states that. That's just the idea of...
But there's no evidence to say it doesn't?
No, there is. There is evidence to it, but there's nothing clear that ties it towards the Hajj. That we're told on the 10th of Al-Hijjah that we do Eid and we do the Udhiyah. But to say that you must do it on the same day as the Hujjaj, that's not. There's nothing that supports that idea. Wallahu a'lam. So again, it comes down to an issue of when the new moon is sighted within your. Are you going to go with the global sighting or are you going to go with the regional sighting? But it's not necessarily that the Hujjaj are doing it, so we have to do it on exactly the same day. Allahu a'lam. Anybody else on that? The key point here to take out, it's a point of difference, and we should respect differences. Differences are something. The Salaf of this Ummah, like Umar ibn Abdul Aziz, he said, "Ikhtilaf al-Ummah rahmah." Ikhtilaf al-Ummah, the difference in the Ummah, the Prophet's life is a mercy. Is a mercy for this Ummah. Wallahu a'lam. The third issue. Point number 3. The definition of fasting, and that's going to bring up the next controversial or confusing issue. The definition of fasting. Fasting is abstaining from food, drink, and marital relations from Fajr to Maghrib with the intention of drawing near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The definition of fasting includes within 3 things. Fasting has 3 parts to it, 3 arkan. The first is al-imsak, that you abstain from food, drink, and marital relations. And we'll speak about that when we speak about what breaks the fast. The second issue is the time, Fajr to Maghrib. You fast from Fajr to Maghrib. Yeah. The third issue, niyyah. You must have a niyyah. So you've got 3 issues. For a fast to be valid, you must abstain from food, drink, marital relations. That's 1. Second, you have to abstain for the day from Fajr to Maghrib. Third, you must make niyyah. Looking at the second issue, which is the time, the confusing issue now is when is Fajr? When is Fajr? Because you have so many different timetables, and you've got a range from around 1 o'clock-ish to almost about 3:30. So you've got a 2-hour range within timetables. And again, this is not controversial, this is just confusing for people. It's just confusing people, particularly those who have to set the timetables. It becomes a very difficult decision to make. Just to give some understanding, why do we have this range of timetables? It should be Fajr starts when the first light of dawn hits the horizon. That's when Fajr, which is when the sun is 18 degrees beneath the horizon. That's when Fajr starts. The sun is 18 degrees beneath the horizon. If you went out, not into cities, because cities you have like pollution or the light pollution, you're never going to see it properly. You need to go out into the countryside when it's pitch black. When it's pitch black, no city lights around, then when you see the first light of dawn, it just fades. It's a very gradual fading across the whole of the eastern horizon. We're in England. In the summer, for about 2.5 months, you have no beginning. First of all, you don't have an Isha. Right now, there is no Isha time. Right now, there is no Isha. Isha, the Prophet said, إِذَا غَابَ الشَّفَقِ, when twilight disappears. And a shafaq, according to the majority, is a humra, the redness, a faint redness in the sky. According to Abu Hanifa, it's al-bayad, the clear sky. At this time, it doesn't disappear. If you went out into the countryside, pitch black, you will see that there's a faint, very faint reddy glow. And it doesn't go until Ishraq, until the end of Fajr. So from Maghrib all the way up until Fajr, you have a Maghrib time. You have a Maghrib time. So what do we do now? First issue, which is not our issues here, Isha time. Timetables will still have a time. What have they done? They've done what's known as Taqdeer al-Waqt. They've set a time. They fixed a time, like 1.5 hour after, one hour after. Taqdeer al-Waqt. They fixed the time. Because that's what the Prophet told the Sahaba to do, Ayyam al-Dajjal. In the time of the Antichrist, when time changes, he said, Uqduru lahu al-Waqt. He said, fix a time for it. Fix a time for it. When he said that one day will be equal to a year, and one day will be equal to a month, one day equal to a week, and so on. What do we do about prayer? The Prophet said, fix a time. So all the timetables that now have a set time, it's taqdeer al-waqt. And that's what has to happen. A time has been fixed. The same issues happen with Fajr. The reason why you have such a variety of times is because of taqdeer al-waqt. Is because there's different ways that the ulama have come out to determine how. Some will say aqrab al-bilad, the nearest country. Some will say the last time is about 1-ish, about 1:15. Some will go according to they will maintain the old degree system, 18 degree, 15 degree. There's different ways, and that's why you have such a range of times. What's the best thing to do in a situation like this? The right thing is take one and go with it. Take one and go with it. So if you're now going to fix a time, or the mosque has a set timetable, go with that timetable. If a mosque goes with an earlier timetable, like the earliest one is about 1:15, and so be it, but just maintain whatever you're doing. Just recognize that there's a reason why you have such a vast, different scope of time, like over 2 hours. There's a reason for that. If you're going to stick with 3:30, some timetables will have it as late as 3:30, then so be it. It gives you a shorter fast, but for somebody who's working, it may be a bit more difficult, because by the time you finish your Taraweeh, you come back home, it's already getting close to 1. It's hard then to go to sleep and then to wake up and then go back to bed and then wake up for work. So if you're like in a normal professional routine, it'll be difficult. And at one level, the 1 o'clock time is a lot easier. Because as soon as you finish your Taraweeh, you can have your suhoor, and you may even be doing suhoor whilst you're praying Taraweeh, because it depends upon how. In Al Rahma Mosque in Liverpool, they're finishing at 1 o'clock. They're finishing at 1 o'clock. So it depends how you're going to do it. But if you're going to do early time, it means you've got an extra 2 hours in your fast, and the fast is already long. So we have a qa'idah fiqhiyya. إذا ضاق الأمر اتسع ما جعل الله عليكم في الدين من حرج. When something becomes hard, it becomes easier. When an issue becomes difficult for people, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it easier. So take your pick. Just go with your local mosque. You want to go with an easy one because of work. You want to go with, but what not to do? Don't be changing it every day. Don't be changing it every day. If you're going to go with one timetable, go with one timetable. If you're just going to go with the mosque timetable, so be it. Because it's all right. It's all right. At this time of the year, it's all right. It doesn't matter which timetable, because they're all just doing ijtihad. They're all just trying to come to understand an issue that there's no definitive answer. The Prophet just told them, set a time. He didn't tell us how to set that time. So that's now the mujtahid imams. The imams, they're now going to determine that. And then whatever answer comes back, it's all good. It's all good. So what's confusing shouldn't be confusing. And definitely, it should not become a cause of an argument. This hasn't become an issue in argument, but it probably will soon, rather than later. It will become an argument, but it should definitely not be in there. Wallahu a'lam. So any questions on that particular point? Yeah, brother.
The brother and sister in Liverpool, they had a fatwa regarding Isha time.
Jama'.
To bring it earlier.
Yeah.
It's no nights, is it?
Yeah, and that's a fatwa of some. So, yeah. Like a fatwa of some imams is you can pray them together, Maghrib and Isha. Yeah, that's an opinion of some imams. That's the Allah. Yeah.
So, getting home, and we've had Isha, yeah?
Go on.
It's nodding off like, and it's about 1 o'clock. What's the time, distance before?
Are you going with the earlier or the later?
We're going with 2:30.
2:30. There you go. You got 2:30. That's your local mosque timetable.
We've got to stick with that one. Yeah.
It's
I'm at home, if it's not Ramadan, and if I'm at home, and it's in the summertime again, it's going to happen again next year. And if I get home and it's 20 minutes to go, yeah, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning, can I read my Isha namaz and straight after read my Fajr as well? Or I'm not allowed to do that. What's the time distance?
Whatever's been set. Like if you're going with your local mosque timetable, just the easier thing here would just be to go with your local mosque timetable. That's the easier thing in these matters. Unless it's going to cause you difficulty, then you have some scope. But if your local mosque timetable is going with 2:30, then just stick with that. If just for ease for yourself, you want to go with an easy time, so be it. And whatever that time is, whatever the time is that you're going with, then just work according to that time and treat that as your time. Is that fair?
I just got to register a protestation. The annual was at 2 o'clock, so I was looking forward to that. Why shall I finish my Tarawih, come back, do a little bit of the 2:30.
Speak to him about it later on. He's got a world on his shoulders at the moment with that. Any other questions on that point? Particularly the issue of Fajr? And the point being, again, don't make this an argument, don't make this confusing. There's reason why you have these differences. Just go either with your mosque one just to make it easier for you, or just take one which is easier for you. There's no harm in doing that. If it just makes it a lot more easier for you, then it's all ijtihad there to the ulama. There's no right and wrong answer in these matters.
Yeah. When is the last time you can pray your Isha prayers?
If you're going to, let's say for example, you go 2:30, then that's the last time. Because the rule is, Isha goes all the way up until Fajr. Isha goes all the way up until Fajr. Yeah.
On a serious note, Shaykh,
that was serious as well, wasn't it?
What I said was wrong, actually.
Sorry, go on.
And the time itself, say if you decided that because there isn't a time and you're going to go at 2 o'clock throughout the whole of Ramadan, whether you were off or whether you were there, can you do that or not?
No. What you should not do is just randomly pick a time. That's not what taqdeer al-waqt means. It doesn't mean just set any time you want.
What's happened with others, we have an annual timetable. And on that annual timetable, it's 2 o'clock. But what happens is that historically we've always followed
Victoria Park, you told me that day.
To Morocco. And 2 years ago, so almost 3 years ago now, we had a scholar that came to Warrington, and he told us about the various formulas. And he said that your times need to be changed. Well, they need to be at this time. But then what happened was a lot of people in Warrington went to Victoria Park and put their timetables and used them. So now, for example, now this year, even though our annual timetable is saying 2 o'clock, our Ramadan timetable is saying 2:30. Just for this one. So I guess in a way, for Ramadan, our timetable is different to our annual timetable.
So you have a problem. You have a problem. But the point, sorry, on Zephyr's point is you don't just randomly choose a time. There has to be some basis for how it's being worked out.
If he sticks with our annual timetable of 2 o'clock and doesn't switch to our Ramadan timetable, then he's still following the annual timetable that we've had for the last 10 years or so.
Okay. We're assuming that 2 o'clock actually came from somewhere. It wasn't just.
That's right. It's been calculated.
Okay, then as long as there's some basis for it, then so be it. But the problem that you're going to have now is that people are just going to see this confusion because of differences between the timetables. So it needs to be explained to people. Like somebody needs to get into that mosque, like at a bayan, for example, before Jummah, and speak to the people and let them know this is the reason why. This is the reason why. Like that confusion needs to be clarified in the minds of people.
Yeah, to be honest, it would be more of an issue if it wasn't the same as what the boys in Victoria are.
Yeah. But even that, I mean, you can't. You're in Warrington. Warrington is not Manchester. You can't just decide we'll go with the Manchester timetable. So even though the mosque may be tied into the main mosque in Victoria Park, you can't just take a Manchester timetable and apply it in another city.
I think to be honest, Sheikh, what we actually need to redo our annual timetable.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Yeah, that's right.
If you're going to do France, you may as well France again, their timetable.
I think our annual timetable was based on Victoria Park.
Yeah, but I thought they followed Morocco, but when it comes to Eid, they did a different day. I can't understand that one.
The mosque issues are coming out now. Keep it to your mosque. Those arguments going on in the mosque, not here.
I know, but we're just trying to get an answer because we're confused.
Yeah, but it's not
I think let's
Just do it at 3
Yeah, just go with 3 o'clock instead. Add another time in there.
Might as well, yeah.
Yeah, Talha. No, there isn't. If it's too difficult for him, no, there's no issue. No, there's no issue with that. So that's the issue of time, from Fajr till Maghrib. The third issue with fasting is niyyah. Niyyah. When you make your niyyah is the first thing to clarify. Your intention is in your heart. Your intention is in your heart. It's good to say the intention, but you don't need to say it. You don't need to say it. Niyyah, al-azm fil qalb. It's a resolve within the heart to do the fast. That's what niyyah is. If you want to say it and you say, I make an intention, and asum ghadan lillahi ta'ala, that I fast tomorrow for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's good. If you want to say it's good, there's no harm in doing that, but that's not your niyyah. Niyyah is always inside of the heart. So don't worry if you don't say it. Don't worry if you don't say it. Like before you went to sleep, in your heart, your niyyah, I'm fasting tomorrow. If you said it or not doesn't make a difference, you got it in your heart. Also, the other thing which we'll come on to, don't worry if you didn't have your sahur. If you didn't eat your sahur, don't worry about that. That's not, you're actually fasting. Food's not the major factor. Whether you have a sahur or not, whether you eat your sahur or not, it's good, it's rewarded. But if you didn't eat, you still have a fast as long as you have intention. As long as you have intention. Intention is the condition. Eating is blessed. The Prophet said, "Tasahharu fa inna fi sahuri barakah." Said, eat because there's blessings in that food. Even just a sip of water. Even just a sip of water. But if you didn't, you'll still have a fast as long as you made niyyah. As long as you made niyyah. So like people say, I woke up and I didn't have me sahur. Did you have your niyyah in your heart? That's the most important thing. And Ramadan, and unless he's really off the rails and he doesn't pray and doesn't do anything, all Muslims have a niyyah that they're going to fast every single day. Niyyah it's almost like a default for Muslims that they are going to fast. So niyyah is not the big thing to worry about. The time of niyyah. The time of niyyah. The first point you can make intention is Maghrib of that day. And mathalan, for example, let's say you're going to fast tomorrow for Shaban, 15th Shaban. It's too early now to make your niyyah. It's too early because Maghrib hasn't come in. The beginning of a day is Maghrib time. So you have to wait. You cannot, except for Imam Malik, the majority, including Abu Hanif and Shafi'i, said you cannot make an intention for the whole of the month. It has to be every single day separately. Just as you wake up in the morning and make niyyah, I'm going to pray 5 prayers today. You don't do that. Every prayer is a separate prayer. Every day of Ramadan is a separate ibadah. It's a separate worship. So you need to make a new intention every single day. So the first point, Maghrib. The best point of niyyah, just before Fajr. Just before Fajr. The best time to make niyyah, just before Fajr comes in. Just even if you already made niyyah, just do tajdeed and niyyah. Just do it again. Just put it into your heart again that you're fasting lillahi ta'ala, that you're going to fast for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The last point of intention. When is the last point you can make your intention? The Hanafis are slightly different to the rest. In the Hanafi madhab, for the fast of Ramadan, in Ramadan, you have all the way up until Dhuhr. All the way up until Dhuhr. And for example, if on day number 1, you go to sleep and they still haven't sorted out whether you're fasting or not because it's confused. No announcements has come. So you go into bed and you're still not sure. And you wake up and Fajr is already gone. Fajr is gone. And then you're told, today's the first day of Ramadan. With Abu Hanifa, you can make niyyah. As long as you've not eaten, you can make niyyah. So even though you've gone past Fajr, you can make niyyah as long as you've not gone all the way up until Dhuhr. Dhuhr is too late. Dhuhr is too late. That's only with Abu Hanifa. The Jumhur, the majority, said the last point you can make niyyah is Fajr. No niyyah after Fajr. Abu Hanifa said you can go past Fajr. You can go past Fajr. Or like somebody who wasn't fasting, like some people, they may not be praying nor fasting, but he just decided, I'll do a day of Ramadan. I'll start fasting today. But Fajr has already started. According to the majority, it's too late. Abu Hanifa allows it. He allows it. You've got all the way up until Dhuhr, or just before Dhuhr. So that's the issue of niyyah. Any questions on niyyah? Any questions on intention? There's no controversy, so no questions. No questions on niyyah. Okay. We need to get an argument going about niyyah then. Let's get an argument going.
Can you make niyyah, does it have to be verbal or can you do it in your head?
No, just in your head's enough. Just in your head's enough. You don't need to say it. Anything else on niyyah? Yeah.
It comes down to sincerity again, doesn't it?
That's ultimately what it is, yeah.
That's what it is.
That's pretty much what it is, yeah. Yeah. Okay. The fourth point. And these points are now looking at who is allowed not to fast. Because we mentioned at the beginning, a sane adult Muslim has to fast. But then there are some exceptions to that rule. Who is allowed not to fast? We've got 5 people who are exempted from fasting. The first 2 are stated in the Quran, وَإِن كُنْتُمْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ أو إن كنتم مريضا أو على سفر فعدة من أيام أخرى. Allah mentioned 2 exceptions in the Quran: a sick person and a traveller. So the first one is a sick person. If somebody's sick to the point where it will harm him by fasting, he's allowed not to fast. But sickness means that one of 3 things. It means one of 3 things. Either by him fasting, it's going to make his problem worse. That's the first thing. If he fasts, it's going to get worse. The second, it will delay his recovery from that problem that he has. The third, it will trigger the problem. In those 3 cases, you're allowed not to fast. Either it's going to make it worse, it's going to delay the problem, delay recovery from it, or it's going to trigger something you may have recovered from. In those 3 cases, you're allowed not to fast. Somebody suffers hay fever, he has to take some type of nasal spray, he's allowed not to fast. A diabetic, as we're going to discuss about injections, he has to take his insulin, but at the same time, he needs to eat food. He's allowed not to fast. Asthmatic has to take an inhaler, he's allowed not to fast. So any type of medical problem that will cause difficulty by making it worse, delaying recovery, or triggering a problem, is exempted from fasting bi-nass al-Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated in the Quran. Then we have a second issue. How do you know that it's going to cause a problem? How do you know? And this is not just you just deciding that I'm suffering a bit today, so I'm not going to fast. You can't just make a random decision not to fast. There's 3 ways that you know that you're allowed not to fast. 1, a Muslim doctor, trained, skilled Muslim doctor, tells you that you should not fast. So if you have some type of problem where you think, I can do it, but it may cause you difficulty, go to a doctor, but it has to be Muslim. You cannot take the statements of somebody who's not a Muslim to build ibadah. Ibadah lillahi ta'ala has to be based on khabar Muslim. So based on the statements of a Muslim, an act of worship. But what makes it more difficult is a practicing Muslim. To find a practicing Muslim doctor is difficult. Muslim doctors, there's loads of them. There's loads of them. The NHS runs on Muslim doctors.
It's fine, consultant is even harder.
It is. Yeah. Keep your politics to the home as well. So it should really be a practicing Muslim doctor who advises you. And if that Muslim doctor tells you you should not fast, then don't fast. Then don't fast. If you go to a non-Muslim doctor and they're telling you don't bother about fasting, then get it confirmed with a Muslim doctor. Get it confirmed with a Muslim doctor. That's one way. Second way is tajriba sabiqa, past experience. Last year you had hay fever, you couldn't fast, and it's summer and it's coming up again, and you know you're not going to be able to fast. Doesn't matter what the doctor tells you or not, you don't need to fast. And the third is ghalib al-dhan, where it's obvious to you that you're not going to be able to fast. You're knocked out stone cold, you can barely move, you don't need to worry about finding a doctor. It's obvious to you that you can't fast. So in those cases, you're allowed not to fast. Then the next question that comes, if you don't fast, what are you meant to do instead of it? There's two possibilities. If somebody's exempted from fasting, there's two things. First, he does fidya. Every day of fasting, he must give in sadaqah, in charity, the equivalent of nissa', half a sa' of wheat, which is an old measure that was used in the time of the Prophet. It equates to, it's the same as your fitrana, zakat al-fitr, which is around, maximum should be around £2. Maximum should be around £2. So every day of fasting, if somebody has that problem, every day of fasting, he pays that amount. This assumes he's not going to recover from that problem. Afwan should have worded it differently. Assuming that's a permanent problem that he's not going to recover from. A permanent problem that he's not going to recover from. Like could be an asthmatic who's got severe case. A diabetic who's got a severe problem. And there's no expected recovery from that. Then he does fidya for every day. So somebody of that nature, every Ramadan, £60, he gives it in sadaqah and that will cover him. Assuming he does not recover from that. If, however, it's either a temporary problem or he's going to recover from this long-term sickness, then he has to do qada. And we should have said that first. He has to make up for every day. So like asthmatic may not recover from that. But a hay fever sufferer, the problem summer, it's not going to be, it shouldn't be in the winter. He does qada in the winter when he's not suffering that problem. He does qada of it. So the first should have been the first. If you're able to fast them at other times of the year, then that's your obligation. You have to fast. There's no option to pay. There's no option to pay. You have to do qada of it. But if you can't because it's a permanent problem that you're not recovering from, then you make the payment in place of the fast. So that's a sick person. Any question on a sick person? Yeah.
With parents who are old and they want to fast, and you know that it's not beneficial. But how do you go about it? How do you say to your parents? I think.
How would you say that? You know your parents. You figure out a way of saying it to your parents. that's you and your parents. Sorry, at the end. Sorry, after Muzaffar. Sorry, I had his hand up first. Yeah.
Will the ill person still get the reward of Ramadan?
If he's somebody who used to fast year in year out, then yeah. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات فلهم أجر غير ممنون. أجر غير ممنون, except for those who believe and do good deeds, they have an unbroken reward. Some of the Mufassirin mentioned that means a person who's sick, who used to worship when he's healthy, his reward will continue whilst he's sick. So if he was regularly somebody who would always fast, never missed a fast, and then he got struck down by his sickness, then inshallah he gets that reward. He gets that reward. Sorry, Zafar.
Shaykh, I'm just briefly going to make a comment. The biggest problem that's going to be for the Muslim population in terms of illness for fasting is diabetes. So I would advise all people who have relatives or friends that have diabetes to get their loved one to go and see a doctor or a diabetic nurse specialist now, explain Ramadan is coming, because there'll be adjustments in medication that will be necessary. So that is something that you can plan for. So the difficulty is going to be that if you have a glass of water at suhoor and then have your insulin injection and go to sleep, that's going to be a big problem. So at least kind of preparation and planning for that. So just have a chance, and this necessary, it's probably likely that there'll be adjustments in the medication that are required during that time. So you can compensate for that. There'll be obviously situations that you can't fast at all, but the vast majority will mean that you'll have different requirements. And because the fasts are so long and it's likely that summer's going to be hot, mashallah, I think the hydration is the other important aspect. So after the breaking of the fast and before suhoor, make sure you're adequately hydrated. So just please pass that on to all family members. Make sure you have an appointment. So you've spoken to them and give them guidance as to what your hours of fasting are going to be, and they'll be able to guide you as to what adjustments you need to make in your medication.
Excellent, thank you.
On Sadaqah, can you give more than like £2 a day?
You can do. But that's your own optional thing. But the actual requirement is that for somebody who can't fast. The second case is a traveller. The second case is a traveller. A traveller. First thing with a traveller is to define who is a traveller, who's musafir shar'an, who's a legal traveller. And again, we have differences across madhahib on this issue. In the Hanafi madhab, a traveller is somebody who travels more than the distance of 57 miles from his hometown and stays at that place for less than 15 days. With the Jumhur, with the majority, less than 3 days. In the Hanafi madhab, less than 15 days. The mileage is roughly the same. It's between 50 to about 57. But I was taught 2 things must be in place. Distance and time. You travel a distance from your hometown, more than 57 miles, and you stay there for less than 15 days, then you are a traveller. If either of those two are missing, you're not a traveller. If you travel from Warrington to Manchester, you haven't got more than 57 miles, you're not a traveller. You're not a traveller. Warrington to Manchester, you're not a traveller. But you're going on like Warrington to London, but you stopped off briefly at Manchester, then you are a traveller because you're going to London. You're going to London. But Warrington, Manchester and back, you're not a traveller. Or alternatively, you travel from Warrington to London and you're staying there for a month, you're not a traveller because the time. When are you a traveller? Warrington, London, it's more than 57 miles and you stay there for a weekend. Then you're a traveller. And then you have the option to fast or not to fast. So both must be in place. You're a traveller from your hometown, more than a distance of 57 miles. When we say more than a distance, that's what defines you as being a traveller, but you become a traveller the moment you leave the boundaries of your city. You don't have to have gone 57 miles. The moment you leave the boundaries of your city, you're a traveller, but you're going more than 57 miles. Then you're a traveller, and you stay there for less than 15 days. If you're a traveller, what should you do with your fast? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you some guidance on that. He said, وَأَن تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Fasting is better for you. So that's the better. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala states it clearly in the Quran. Fasting is better for you. As a traveller, fasting is better for you. But then the Hanafi fuqaha state that's provided it's not going to be too difficult for you. If you're on a long journey and you're going to be, it's a long journey and it's going to be hard for you and it's hot and it's a long day. It could be, let's say, like you're flying to Jeddah for Umrah in the last 10 days of Ramadan. You're flying and it's going to be easy more than 24 hours before you actually get to your hotel in Mecca. It's going to be a long, drawn-out day, a hot day. You're on the go all day, and you might find it hard. Better that you don't fast because of the difficulty. If it's difficult, better you don't fast. But if it's easy for you and there's no hardship, better that you do fast. You can do either way. You can do either way. But to be truthful, right? If you're a traveller, let's say you're a weekend down in London, only 2 days, and you're staying with family or friends, and it's not difficult to fast, you're best off fasting. One, because you're going to have to make it up afterwards. That's the most obvious. Well, that's the most obvious reason. You're going to have to do it anyway, and you're fasting, and it's not hard. So you might as well do it within the month of Ramadan. Like, here's an insane, although legally it's perfectly sound, but it's crazy if you did this. You went to Ramadan for the last 10 days. You went to Mecca for the last 10 days of Ramadan. You were legally not required to fast. But you'd be crazy if you didn't. Because every fast is multiplied 100,000 times, and you can come back to England and do them instead. So fiqh, you're perfectly allowed not to, but it makes no sense. Like the amount of reward you're going to get just by being in there and doing a fast, and you're going to come back and do qada here in England, it doesn't match up. But legally, you had that option. One point to add, and this is a point that most people don't get, most people are not aware of. When you say that as a traveller, you have an option not to fast. This mas'ala is in the Hanafi as well as the Shafi'i madhab. When we say that you have an option not to fast, it assumes that you're a traveller before Fajr. Before Fajr. That's an important point to note, because most people are not aware of this point. It assumes that you're a traveller before Fajr. What does that mean? I'm in Liverpool and it's a Friday and I'm planning to travel down to London for the weekend. But I'm in Liverpool, Fajr time I'm in Liverpool and I'm going to travel in the afternoon. I know I'm travelling, I have to fast. Like now I get onto the motorway, some people say I'm travelling now, I'll break my fast. Haram to break your fast. It's haram to break your fast. To have the option not to fast assumes you were a traveller before Fajr. Not that you start the day fasting, you just decide I'll break it now because I'm on my journey. It's not allowed, you're not allowed to break your fast having started now that you become a traveller. So the only way you can not fast, let's say, take the example of travelling to London. Friday afternoon you travel. Then Saturday and Sunday you're down in London. Friday afternoon you started as a resident, you're going to fast the whole of that day. Doesn't matter how long that day stretches out, you're going to fast the whole of that day. Saturday you're in London, you're a traveller. Sunday you're in London, you're a traveller. You can choose to fast or not to fast because you're a traveller at Fajr time. So be aware of that point because most people are not aware and most people are not told that point. To have the option not to fast, you must be a traveller before Fajr. Allah. And that's the issue of traveller. Any questions on traveller? Yeah.
So, for example, you're flying to the east, you've got time differences. Do you now break your fast at the point of where you are? So just try and make best guess. You've got, maps on the screen and stuff like that. And usually if you're on an Islamic airline, they might tell you.
What's an Islamic airline?
Well, that's Muslim-owned airlines, but they don't really tell you.
Yeah.
So is that your point of fast or where you started from?
It's from where you're at. And that's anything as a traveller. Whether it's your prayer time, let's say you're travelling down and you stop at a service station, you don't base it on where you came from or where you're going to, it's where you're at. And if you don't know clearly, then you're going to have to make an educated guess, but be cautious and delay it, especially with the fast. You don't want to get, as we're going to see, you don't want to get it wrong. So like if you're on the plane, look out and check what time it is. And if you're a bit uncertain, then just wait, just delay. You don't need to break your fast straight away, although it's good. But what you're definitely not doing is based on where you came from, because it could have been like 5 hours back now. And because of how far you've gone, or the destination, like you're going to like Jeddah, for example, that's another 3 hours, and they've already broken their fast, but you can see the sun out in the window. You can't break your fast, so you base upon where you're at that particular point. Any other questions on traveller? Yeah.
There's so much luxury now, even with travelling, that is not really, if you're young and fit, I think the majority of people will carry on fasting.
That's you, you're a strong man, aren't you? You're a strong man.
Wait,
it's him, isn't it? Yeah, you're a strong man. You're right though, you're right.
Carry on,
Inshallah. Well, not everybody's as pious as you. Yeah, that's what it's about. What if travelling on the plane and don't leave before Fajr? The fast will be long, you still have to fast. If you're out of your town before Fajr, then you're okay. If it's after Fajr, then you have a long day ahead of you. Then you have a long, hard fast ahead of you. The third case, that happened to me when I was coming back from Damascus one time. I was studying in Damascus in Syria, and the taxi driver killed me because my flight was leaving. Damascus airport's outside the city. It's about 15-20 minutes outside by taxi, and I was flying back to Manchester, and it wasn't due to get back here till about 7 o'clock in the evening, but iftar was about 9 o'clock. My flight was leaving Damascus airport at 9 o'clock, but you had to be there early, and by the time Fajr, I think on that day was about 5 o'clock. So I told the driver, I need to be out before Fajr. He said, no, we'll pray Fajr and then we'll go. I said, I just need to be outside the boundary city, then I'm okay. I said, no. He said, we'll pray Fajr and then go. He wouldn't budge. I had to fast the whole of that day, and it was difficult. It was very difficult. And it was just like, prayed Fajr and went out. Half an hour later, we were out of the city.
Very strong that day,
He wasn't. I had no choice. I was cornered. I should have waited outside the city. The third case, person who's exempted is a frail elderly person. That's the question the brother just asked before about your parents who are old but they still insist on fasting. But the first thing to know, if they're old and frail and elderly, is what they call a Shaykh al-Fani. Shaykh al-Fani, al-Ajuz al-Fani, somebody who's old and he's getting weaker and weaker by the day. Because there are some old people who are strong. There's some old people who are strong and they won't have any difficulty. They need to fast. But if somebody's old and he's getting weaker and weaker by the day, they don't need to fast. They're allowed not to fast. They do the same as the permanently sick person. They do fidya. They make a payment for every day. There's no qada because they're old and they're getting weaker, so they're not going to be able to make it up. But the issue is what was mentioned there. If you can clearly see the suffering, then you should advise them to break it. But then you've got to figure out, it's your father, it's your mother, you're going to have to figure out how to convince them. But if it really is harmful to them, then you should really try and, in the best of possible ways, try and advise them not to fast.
Do you know, if they don't listen to you and you tell them, can you lie and say the doctor said it's not good?
No, just go and ask, instead of lying, just go and ask the doctor. And he'll tell you it's not good, and then you told the truth. But don't lie. Just go and ask a doctor. But no, don't lie in that case. Don't lie. It's a simple solution to that. Anything else on that? Frail elderly person, fidya, makes a payment, same as a permanently sick person. Every day the equivalent of zakat al-fitr. The fourth case, a pregnant woman and a breastfeeding woman. A pregnant woman should not fast if it's going to be harmful for her child, or for herself, or for the unborn child. A woman who's pregnant and feels that she's able to fast without any difficulty has to consider that it's not like a sick person who may be able to bear it with some difficulty. There's a child that's involved here. There's a child that needs to be considered. So it's more important that she takes medical advice. Here also she can take advice from a Muslim midwife. A Muslim midwife is acceptable to consult, but she should only fast if she's advised to fast. She should only fast if she's advised to fast. And a breastfeeding woman, the same thing. As she needs to eat to produce milk for that child, and it's more important that she produces milk for the child than that she fasts. What she shouldn't do is, because she wants to fast, start bottle feeding the child. Breastfeeding is the best option that there is for a child. It's the best thing for a child. So she now, because she's breastfeeding, she needs to eat. She's exempted. She doesn't need to fast. In that case, both a pregnant woman and breastfeeding woman, all that's required of her is qada. She doesn't need to do anything else. Qada, she just makes up that month that she wasn't fasting, and that's all that's required of her. If she's pregnant, she breastfeeds for 2 years. 2 years breastfeeding, Abu Hanif, 2.5 years is the maximum. But that's potentially going to be 3 years that she doesn't fast. She does qada of it. The question about how long has she got to fast, how long has she got to do the qada, we'll get onto that on the next page. But that's all that's required. If she just needs to do qada, that's in the Hanif madhab, nothing but qada. She just makes them. In the other madhab, she also has to make a payment. In the other madhab, Shafi, Ahmed and Malik says she has to make a payment as well as do qada. Abu Hanifa rahimahullah says all she needs to do is qada and nothing else for the months that she missed. Does it matter if breastfeeding mother feels she can manage? Should she still not fast? Again here, I mean, if she genuinely can manage and she's advised it's okay to do that, then she should fast. If she's able to do it without any difficulty, she should fast. But she should not. Like, the child needs to drink milk. The child needs to drink milk. So it's better that she takes advice on that from a doctor before, or if she's done it previous times and it was not difficult and there was enough milk being produced, then there's no issue with that. Allahu A'lam. Any questions on that one, pregnant and breastfeeding? Okay, the last one. The last case exempted, menstruating woman or woman in postnatal bleeding. First here to define, menstruation is 3 to 10 days. 3 to 10 days, minimum 3 days, maximum 10 days. Postnatal bleeding is from birth of child up until maximum 40 days. And both of them, it's based upon the bleeding, not the time period. Within 3 to 10 days, if she's bleeding, then she's menstruating. Postnatal bleeding, it's not 40 days that she doesn't fast. It's as long as she was bleeding within 40 days. Because both men and women seem to assume a woman's given birth, 40 days she can't pray, she can't fast, and so it's not 40 days. 40 days is the maximum. It's the period of time she's bleeding during those 40 days. That's when she's not allowed to pray or to fast. A woman who's menstruating and a woman in postnatal bleeding is different from the other four. The other four cases, a sick person, traveller, frail, elderly person, pregnant and breastfeeding woman, although they have an option in the second case, and in the other three cases, they really shouldn't fast. If in any of those three cases they fasted, it all counts as a fast. It all counts as a fast. Like if that sick person struggled, but they fasted, even though it was very difficult, it all counts as a fast. Menstruating woman or a woman in postnatal bleeding, not only is she not allowed to fast, it will not count as a fast even if she did. It will not count as a fast even if she did. If she went for the whole day without eating and drinking, with near a fast, it will not count as anything. It will not count as anything. So she's not allowed to fast and it won't count. Go on.
Should you read the Quran?
No, she can't. We'll just mention here, a woman who's menstruating, there's 7 things that's haram for her to do. She can't pray, she can't pray, she can't read Quran, she can't touch the Quran, she cannot enter into the masjid, she can't do tawaf around the Kaaba, she can't fast, and she cannot have marital relations with her husband. 7 acts that are haram. So she can't read the Quran and she can't touch the Quran. The Prophet ﷺ said, لا يقرأ القرآن حائض ولا جنوب. The Prophet ﷺ said a menstruating woman and a sexually impure person should not touch it, should not read the Quran. لا يقرأ القرآن حائض ولا جنوب. A menstruating woman and sexually impure person should not read any of the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said about touching, لا يمسه إلا المطهرون.
From a particular lecture that obviously if you're junub, you can get rid of it every minute, so you can't wash. But for a woman who's on a period, you can bleed it with gloves. You can wear gloves and
The opinion of a woman reading Quran who's on her period is not the opinion of the four mujtahid imams. There is opinions outside. But the 4 orthodox madhabs, they do not allow it. So there are some opinions that state that. Allahu Akbar. And we didn't finish that point. So menstruating woman or a woman in postnatal bleeding, she's not allowed to fast, and it will not count as anything. She's not even allowed to abstain from eating and drinking. The soundest opinion, she should eat. She should eat. A woman can decide that I want to get the spiritual benefits, so I'll just go the day without eating. She shouldn't do that. She should eat, but the afdal is that she eats in private. She doesn't eat in front of people who are fasting. So she should not go through the act of fasting as though she's fasting. Then there's 2 points. The first point, if a woman started the day clean, and then during the day she started menstruation, her fast is over. Her fast is over. She stops, she eats, and then she'll have to make up that day. She'll have to do qada that day. If she started, and here this will may get a bit tricky for a woman, even if it's just like 5-10 minutes before iftar. She went the whole day fasting, and then she realized 5-10 minutes before iftar that she started her hayd. She started her menstruation. Her fast is over, and she has to redo the whole of that day. The required condition for a woman is that the whole of that day she's not hayd. The whole of that day from beginning to end she's not menstruating. The reverse, the opposite. If she started the day menstruating and then during the day she becomes clean, what happens in that case? Here the Hanafis are different to the majority. The Hanafis state that she has to abstain eating and drinking for the rest of the day. Wajib. She must stop eating and drinking, but she still have to make up that day. The Jumhur, the majority, Shafi, Ahmed and Malik, said it's better, but she doesn't have to abstain. So in the Hanafi madhab, if she started the day menstruating and she becomes clean during the day, she has to stop eating and drinking for the rest of that day. Why? Ta'zeeman li shahri Ramadan. Out of respect for the days of Ramadan. Out of respect for the days of Ramadan, she must abstain from eating and drinking, but she will have to do qada of that day. In both ways, she has to make up that day. In both ways. Any questions on menstruation? Okay. The next issue, point number 5, qada. Point number 5, we've spoken about people who are exempted. We're also going to look at people who are not exempted but they broke their fast. But generally the issue of qada. Just as it is fard that you have to fast in Ramadan, it is also fard that if you missed any fast, whether you broke it for a reason or you had no reason but you still didn't bother fasting, you've got to make up every single fast. So whether you had a reason, like a sick person, a traveller, chose not to fast, a pregnant woman, menstruating woman, fard upon them to do qada. They have to make up every fast that they've missed. Also, if you didn't have a reason, if somebody just never bothered to fast, he has to make up every fast. So qada is fard, just as the ada is fard, just as the original fast is fard, likewise making up the fast is fard. When should you make up that fast? How soon? The afdal is straight away. Try not to delay. So as soon as your Eid is over, and Eid is only one day, even though people want to drag out the celebrations of Eid and like 3 days in a week and so on, we just mentioned here there are 5 days when it's haram to fast, only 5 days. The 2 days of Eid and Ayyam al-Tashriq, so Eid al-Fitr, the 1st of Shawwal, Eid al-Adha, the 10th of al-Hijjah, and then the 3 days after that. Those 5 days you are not allowed to fast. You're not allowed to fast. These are the Prophet said these are days of eating and drinking. These are days of eating and drinking that Allah subhanahu requires you to not fast. You must eat and drink on those days. So there's only one day. Ramadan is over, one day is Eid. You want to get onto your qada straight away. Why delay? Right? The sooner you fulfill an obligation, the better. The sooner you fulfill the obligation, the better. If you delayed, you're not sinful. It's better not to delay. Try and get it done as soon as. Because what you don't want to do is just build up all of these fasts and suddenly, especially for a woman, because every year a woman, without fail, she's going to miss some fasts. Whereas with a man, it's only if he has an excuse or he just got lazy. But for a woman, every year, and it's going to start building up year after year, and it's suddenly going to become a large amount. So better that you do it straight away. If you don't do it straight away, then the next best thing is to do it before the next Ramadan. And that's with Abu Hanifa. With the majority, has to be done before the next Ramadan. Otherwise there's a penalty. A payment has to be made. There's a payment that has to be made. So any qada, the safest thing is always try and get it done before the next Ramadan. Before the next Ramadan. But Abu Hanifa rahimahullah did not make that requirement because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ. He just left it general, said any other days. So if you didn't get it done before the next Ramadan, just get it done. Just get it done anytime, and you've got up until the point that you die. You've got up until the point that you die to do your qada. So that's the issue of qada. Ideally, as soon as possible, preferably the day after Ramadan, and the day after Eid. If not, then before the next Ramadan. If not, then you've got up until the point that you die, which may be sooner than you expect. So better not to delay. But you've got up until the point that you die to do them. Any questions on qada? Any questions on qada? Yeah.
I just want you to clarify, if possible, the ruling on sort of say dual intentions. Say, for example, somebody was fasting tonight for the reward of the blessed night tonight. Can they also have the intention of making up one of the fasts they've missed?
Better thing is to make niyyah of qada and fast that day with a niyyah of qada, and then inshallah you're rewarded because the blessings of the day. But to combine two intentions shouldn't be done. But if you take a blessed day and make niyyah of qada on that day, then inshallah you'll get the reward because you're fasting on a special day. Wallahu a'lam. Any other questions? Okay, now we move on. Point 6 and point 7 is going to look at what breaks the fast. What breaks the fast? And when we look at what breaks the fast, we've got two types. One that requires qada kafara and one that just requires qada. So there's two separate types. There's certain acts that require. The first one requires you to make up that day, and there's also a penalty upon you for breaking. The second one you make up that day and that's it. So point number 6 is going to look at the worst type of breaking, where if you broke it, there's a penalty on top of it. That's what the penalty is, what we call kafara. Kafara, qada and kafara. Qada and kafara is required when you break a fast in Ramadan that you started. Only Ramadan fast, no other fast. You started the fast of Ramadan and you broke the fast and you had no reason whatsoever. You just decided I've had enough. and you went and ate some food, or you went and had a drink, or marital relations between husband and wife. With Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, in the case of that, not only have you got to make up that day, but you've got a penalty on top of it. What's the penalty? We have it in hadith. A sahabi came to the Prophet ﷺ and told him, he said, I had sexual relations with my wife during the daytime of Ramadan. The Prophet ﷺ said, A'atiq raqaba, free a slave. That doesn't apply now. Free a slave, but that's what he told him. He said, I don't own anything. So the first thing, if somebody breaks a fast of Ramadan without any valid reason that they started, free a slave. That doesn't apply now. The second, he said, I don't own a slave, I don't own anything. The Prophet ﷺ said, Sum shahrayn mutatabi'een. This is now where it gets hard. He said, fast 2 consecutive months. It's a penalty. It's a penalty. And no excuses accepted here now. Because the Prophet ﷺ, he said, mutatabi'een. There can be no break. He said consecutive. So if you're not going to do, you broke a fast of Ramadan for no valid reason, now you've got to do the penalty. 60 days fast. 60-day fast, 2 months or 60 days. 2 months, it's exactly 2 months if you started at the beginning of Muslim month. So if you now decide, Rajab and Shaban, I'm going to do my kafara. If you started on day 1 of Rajab, then you're going to do a whole 2 months, whether it's 58, 59 and 60 days. But if you started within the month, you're going to have to do a full 60 days. No excuses accepted. If on day 58 you decide, now I'm going on a journey, you're going to have to fast. You've got 2 more days, you need to hang in there. Day 59, you're struggling and you can't last anymore, so you just give it 1 more day, otherwise you're going to have to do 60 all over again. Somebody said it's too hard. That's the point, it's a punishment. The very reason why it's so hard is because you didn't treat the fast of Ramadan seriously. It would have been better if you never bothered fasting. And that's why, if somebody just never bothered fasting, just for years, never prayed and never fasted, all he needs to do is just make up those days. But you started and you broke. That's far worse. You started and then you broke it. Better you didn't fast. So in that case, 60 days without break. The only break is a menstruating woman because she has no control over that. That's something that Allah has decreed for her. So the menstruating woman, if she's doing her 60 days because she intentionally broke, then she stops on the days of menstruation and she'll restart the very next day and she cannot delay by even 1 day. So that's strict and it's difficult, but it has to be done that way. If a person tried and couldn't do those 60 days, or knows that they can't do it, like this Sahabi, when the Prophet ﷺ told him fast 2 months, he said, I couldn't do 1 day, how am I going to do 2 months? I couldn't do 1 day, how am I going to do 2 months? The Prophet ﷺ said, feed 60 poor people. That's option number 3. But that's somebody who either can't do it or he's tried and he couldn't do it. In the Hanif Madhab, wajib at-tartib, you have to go through this order. You can't just decide randomly, I'll feed 60 poor people. Either you know you can't do it or you've tried it and you can't do it. And if somebody has to do a kafara, do it in winter, it's a lot easier. Do December, January, the shorter days, it's a lot easier. And I know brothers who've done that, and it's manageable. If you're going to do it in the summer, you'll kill yourself. But in the winter, it's manageable. But if you know you can't do it, then you go to the third option. And the third option is feed 60 poor people. The equivalent of 2 meals. 2 meals. Either feed them food or give in sadaqah the equivalent of 2 meals for 60 poor people. 2 meals for 60 poor people. And that has to go to poor Muslims. So because of how hard it is, don't ever break a fast. Don't ever, unless you've got a reason, and you struggled and it became too hard for you. Then there's no kafar, then there's no penalty. But don't ever break a fast. Bear in mind what we said. This only applies to the fast of Ramadan. If you started an effort, like tomorrow, let's say you fast tomorrow, 15 Shaban, you fast tomorrow, and it got too hard for you and you broke your fast. Or even you just decided halfway through, I'm not going to do it. There's no kafara. There's no penalty. The penalty is only for the fast of Ramadan, inside of Ramadan that you started. Some people it may suddenly have dawned on some people that they may have to make up, or they may have this penalty because usually teenagers, again we go back to teenagers, the parents are beating them into fasting, and they're past 15, and they started the fast and the moment the parents aren't looking, they went and grabbed some food. Kafara is required. Kafara. If it was a kid who did that, like a 10-year-old, it wasn't fard upon him to fast. So if you broke it, even intentionally, no kafara, no penalty, because there's no with Allah there's no punishment on children. Disciplining parents are different. With Allah no punishments on children. But once he goes beyond the age of puberty, as a teenager, 16, 17, and he went and broke it, it's upon him now to do the kafara. So that's the issue of kafara. When you do kafara, bear in mind, it's not 60 days, 61 days. You've still got to make up that fast that you missed. You've done the 60, but don't forget the original fast. The 60 is the punishment. You still got to do the 1 day. And it's better, if you realise that you've got to do it, it's better that you do the 1 day first that you missed and then do the penalty after that, then do the kafara. A question which may have crossed some people's minds because it's always asked, what if you broke more than one? What if you broke more than one? We'll give you there's an easy and a hard answer. I'll give the easy answer here. Imam Muhammad, the student of Abu Hanifa, said, one kafara will cover all that have gone before. One will cover all. You don't need to do a separate one for every single one. Abu Hanifa said one for each year within which you broke. That's the harder one. But Imam Muhammad, his student, said one set of 60 days will cover all that you've done before, but it only covers what's gone. It doesn't give you now free license now to break your fast whenever, because you've done your kafara. It doesn't now mean you can break any fast you want after that. If you did your kafara, you've covered yourself now, and you made the tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you went and broke it again, you're going to have to do another 60. You didn't learn your lesson the first time around. You're going to have to do it again. It's like a punishment dimension in Sharia and hudud, capital punishment. Somebody drank alcohol, 80 lashes. He did it again. It doesn't now mean that punishment has lifted any sins that he will do it after that. Any questions on kafara?
Which option do you choose regarding that? You said, can you just follow any?
Just miss 6 in it, maybe.
You just decide when you which.
Because it's difficult, there's no harm in taking that, the easier option. Because it's a very difficult. But if you're like him, like he's a brave one who can fast through all difficulties, then go with the harder option. As a general rule in Islam, because you always have different opinion, if there's difficulty, you're dealing with people who are going to find difficulty, then there's ease in religion. But if you want to push yourself, then take the harder option.
When you actually start the punishment?
Sooner the better, don't you? You're too young to have a penalty on you. The sooner the better. The sooner the better. Try not to delay. Don't plan to break another one and then get 16. That covers all. Any other questions on that?
Just to clarify, you said if you do a fast outside of Ramadan and you broke that intention,
No kafara required. Kafara is only for the fast of Ramadan in Ramadan that was broken. So if you did a nafil and broke it, no kafara. If you're doing a qada and broke it, no kafara. And if you're doing kafara and break it, no kafara. It's only for a fast inside Ramadan.
If you break a nafil fast, is that still
If you break a what?
a nafil fast, is that still regarded as a sin?
If you had no real reason. If you have an excuse, then it's not a sin. But if you have no real reason, then it is a sin. Yeah. Any other questions on kafara? Okay, then we look at point 7. The following acts break the fast but do not require a kafara. This is a second type. So this is less severe. The first, somebody accidentally broke his fast. By mistake, you broke your fast. And this is a point of difference. But in the Hanafi madhab, if you know you're fasting, not you forgot, there's no issue. Forgot, no issue. If you know you're fasting and you couldn't control, and food or drink went down, you've broken your fast. That's with Abu Hanifa. So be careful when you're doing wudu in Ramadan. Don't take it to the back of your throat when you're doing wudu. The Prophet ﷺ said, just wash the mouth, but don't take it to your throat. He said, إِلَّا أَنْ يَكُونَ صَائِمًا. When he spoke about washing the mouth thoroughly, he said, unless you're fasting. What's the point of that? If you take water back, some may slip, you've broken your fast. You've broken your fast. Be careful to use miswak. If you use miswak and you swallow bits by mistake, you've broken your fast. You've broken your fast. So if you accidentally break your fast, which is different to forgetting you broke your fast. Forgetting. Accidentally you broke your fast, you've broken your fast. The second one follows on from the first one. Be very careful with the times of sahur and iftar, because you get them wrong and you eat out of time, you've broken your fast. Be very careful with times. Like, let's say you're going with your local mosque from 2:30, and you check your phone and your watch, and you read 2:20, and you're munching away in your sahur, and then checking again, you realise it's 2:40, you've broken your fast. You've broken your fast. So don't mess about with it. Make sure the time's right.
But you're not intention yet.
Doesn't matter. You've broken your fast. The intentional is penalty. That's where anything that goes down will break your fast. So the intentional, what you're talking about is what we just read before, the 60-day punishments. We're breaking the fast. Accidentally breaking the fast breaks the fast. Got the time wrong, you've broken your fast. And the reverse, you're sat down and you've got your little feast spread out in front of you, your iftari's in front of you, and you're about to munch. And you thought Maghrib was coming, and you sat down and started eating. Somebody tells you Maghrib hasn't come in. You've broken your fast. And you're going to have to make up that day. So be very careful with your times. Be cautious with your times. In the first case, if you broke a fast and then you realise you've got to make it up, we said before, in the Hanif madhab, it's wajib that you do imsak for the rest of the day. It's wajib. You have to abstain for the rest of the day, out of respect for the day. So like this happened to somebody talking about it. He said he was doing wudu for Fajr and he's using miswak and he swallowed a bit by mistake. He said it killed him. Because the whole of that day he knows that it doesn't count as a fast, but he can't eat or drink. And he knows he's going to have to make up that day. But so be it. So be it. So even if it's the whole day ahead of you, you made a mistake, you've broken it. Or like the sahur or the seri, you ate by mistake and you were in time. You're going to have to now abstain for the rest of that day, but you still have to make up that day.
Can you clarify the point on, say, if you delay breaking fast?
We'll come on to that point. That's what, I think that's one of the last points. So any question on accidentally breaking your fast? Be clear, we make a distinction between accidentally and forgetting that you're fasting. Forgetting means that you just can't remember and you thought you weren't fasting and you ate and drink and then realised you're fasting. You're okay. Accidental means that you know you're fasting but you couldn't control it. You couldn't control it. With Abu Hanifa, you've broken your fast. Other, like Shafi'i says, it doesn't, but Abu Hanifa says you've broken your fast. So any questions on accidental? The third point, consuming anything that is not nutritious. Consuming anything breaks your fast intentionally, even if it's not nutritious. It's not food or drink. Like somebody chewed some paper, miswork a bit of wood from that, broken your fast. Now you could say it's not food or drink. Breaking the fast, anything that you take down. Anything that you take down will break your fast. If you consume something that's food or drink, that's what requires kafara. That's the penalty. But you consume anything like paper, anything like that, you've broken your fast. The fourth, and here just to mention here, we should have mentioned this CD and E, anything inhaled through the nose and using eardrops. If you take anything through the mouth, the nose, it's broken your fast. You've broken your fast, the mouth and the nose. So if you take some type of spray that you need to use, a nasal spray, it'll break your fast. It'll break your fast. So not just the mouth, the nose. Somebody asked recently in one of these classes, you're allowed to go swimming whilst fasting. You're allowed to go swimming whilst fasting. Unless you seal up your mouth and nose. Unless you seal it up totally in your ears and everything else of your body. Only then. But if you're swimming, he said, what if I keep my head up? It's going to be very hard. Swimming's not going to work. Swimming's not going to work. Another thing to be careful of is going to the dentist whilst fasting. Because there's always going to be spray in the mouth that you're going to swallow. We're going to come to the point of injection. There's a difference amongst the imams over injection. The Hanif madhab injection does not break, but a couple of Muslim dentists, they said when you inject into the numb or into the roof of the mouth to numb the mouth, they said there will be some liquid that will come out that will probably be swallowed. So dental treatment becomes difficult in the month of Ramadan. Likewise, ear drops. So mouth, nose, ear. Eardrops will break the fast. Eye drops do not break the fast. Eardrops break. Eye drops do not break the fast. Also to mention, be careful doing istinja in Ramadan. Be careful doing istinja in Ramadan. Don't be excessively thorough with the water, because if water enters from the rear passage, it will break the fast. It will break the fast. So although you should wash yourself as normal with istinja, normally it's recommended to be as thorough as possible when you wash, except for in Ramadan. And also when washing the front passage, for a woman, she should not use a large amount of water, because water will enter, whereas for a man, it will not enter. For a man, it will not enter. For a woman, she should be careful not to use a large amount. All of these passages that go into the body will break the fast. We'll come on to the issue of toothpaste. We're going to come on to that question about toothpaste. Shall we go out to it? That's a separate issue. We'll come on to that. Any questions on those things that break the fast? Okay. Then we look at what doesn't break the fast. What doesn't break the fast is eating, drinking, or sexual relations forgetfully. If you forget, say Alhamdulillah and enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself and say Alhamdulillah afterwards. As the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا أَطْعَمَكَ رَبُّكَ وَسَقَاكَ. Like if you woke up in the morning and you forgot you were fasting, and you make a full breakfast, and you sit down and you eat, and after you finish you realize I'm fasting, Alhamdulillah. Say Alhamdulillah. أَطْعَمَكَ رَبُّكَ وَسَقَاكَ. Allah subhanahu made you forget totally because He wanted you to eat that. He wanted you to eat that. So make a dua before that Allah makes you forget. If you see, and that also applies to a nafil fast, like if tonight you make need of fasting tomorrow, and then you wake up because Friday you don't normally fast, it's normally makruh to fast on a Friday. So you don't normally fast, and it's not Ramadan, so you don't normally fast, and you forget, and you sit down and you have food, Alhamdulillah. If you forget. But the moment you remember, you need to stop. Right? The moment you remember, you need to stop. Also to add here, if you see somebody, like you could be at home and you see your wife eating, and you know she's fasting, what should you do? Said, go and join in. And what you should do, they said, if it's an old person, leave him. Leave him. If it's not particularly, like it's an elder who's not listening to you, and they're fasting anyway, let them eat food. If it's a young person you know can cope perfectly well, then you should tell them that they're fasting. And you know that they're fasting. You know that they're fasting. You just realize that they forgot, then you should tell them. You should tell them that you're meant to be fasting. But an old person, just leave them. So that's forgetful. Any questions on forgetting your fasting? Okay, the next one. Eating anything between the teeth less than the size of a chickpea. This assumes that the food, the bits that were left over in your mouth are from the suhoor, from the sari. Because there's no way else it can get into your mouth. It has to be from the suhoor. So if you had a large meal and you got bits all around your mouth, and you swallowed some of those bits from inside the mouth, as long as it's a small amount, less than the size of a chickpea, and it's a small chickpea, because there's a sister a couple of weeks ago, she was like trying to argue, what if it's like a massive large chickpea? Chickpeas are normally small. A small little chickpea, normal average size chickpea, not modified like massive chickpea. A small little amount, it's fine, you're exempt from that. If it becomes too large and it's already in, then you have to do qada, no kafara, just a qada. However, that's assuming it's already in your mouth. Anything that comes from outside your mouth will break your fast, however small it is. Anything you put into your mouth, but here also to add, put into your mouth doesn't break the fast. When is your fast broken? You swallow it. If you put it into your mouth and spit it out, it doesn't break your fast. It's only if you swallow it that it breaks your fast. Putting into your mouth does not break your fast. So with a small amount you put into your mouth and you spat it out, you're okay. With a small amount you put into your mouth and swallowed, even if it's small, you've broken your fast. Be careful if it's raining and you're fasting. Right? You don't want raindrops going down your throat. Be careful if yeah. Close your mouth. Close your mouth if you're out and it's raining. The third case, vomiting. Does vomiting break your fast? We've got a number of cases with vomiting. If a person vomits, it could be that the food is bad, or they had too much for suhoor. Or it could be some people that have reflux and they can't hold food down, and they could bring the food up. If you vomit and you didn't cause it to happen, you didn't induce the vomit, it just happened, you've not broken your fast. Whether it's a small amount that comes out or a large amount, if it's less than a mouthful or more than a mouthful, it doesn't make a difference. If you vomit, it doesn't break the fast. And be careful, because many people think vomiting breaks the fast. It doesn't break the fast. It does not break the fast. When a person vomits, a small amount's going to go back in. It's very difficult to avoid that. That also doesn't break the fast. That also doesn't break the fast. So vomiting does not break the fast. And people should be made aware of this, because in the Hanafi method they said, if a person vomits and then thought he's broken the fast and goes and eats and drinks, there's a kafara required of him. He's got the penalty 60 days. Because there's no hadith, there's nothing in Quran or Sunnah that states that. And there's no logical reason why you should assume that. People assume that, but on what basis? What breaks the fast is something going in, not something coming out. Everything breaking the fast is something going in. So it's irrational to think you've broken your fast. It's not logical to think you've broken your fast. The logic is to say, and here, nothing supports it from Quran or Sunnah, and there's no rational basis for it. So a person should not assume you're broken the fast, and you should make people aware, because some person, it's like another example of that. And here there may be some grounds for this, because in a hadith the Prophet said 5 things break your fast, and amongst them he said ghiba, backbiting. If you know you backbited, what does that now mean? You've broken your fast. Okay, he said that in the hadith. Can you now go and eat and drink? No, you can't. Bil ijma', by consensus you cannot. What did the Prophet mean by saying broke your fast? It means you've lost the reward of your fast. Not that your fast is over and that's it. And that's why if somebody now backbited and then goes and eats and drinks, they've got a kafara, they've got a penalty upon them. So the same here with vomiting. Yeah.
Same with swearing.
Yeah. All sinful acts do not break the fast. You lose the reward and you need to make tawbah from it, but it doesn't break. What?
What if you get it by a car again from saying something?
Behave yourself. You're meant to control yourself in Ramadan.
Sorry, I must say, it says a mouthful.
Yeah, no, sorry, this is the next point. This is induced.
Oh, right.
Induced. Okay. So you said involuntary vomiting where you can't control it, that doesn't break. But then, sorry, that goes on to the next point. If now, let's say somebody's really sick and he needs to force vomit. If you induce the vomit out, if it's less than a mouthful that comes out, small amount comes out, then you're okay, your fast is okay. It's only when it's a large amount that comes out, more than a mouthful, only then have you broken your fast. So there's only one case, you force the vomit out, and it's a large amount that comes out, only then have you broken your fast. And then only a qada is required. Having a wet dream does not break the fast. Somebody sleeps whilst he's fasting and he has a sexual emission, it does not break his fast. And then also the next one after that, if somebody during the night he has relations with his wife and he needs to take a ghusl and he delays it until Fajr time, it doesn't break his fast. Because the Prophet Sayyidah Aisha mentioned that the Prophet had relations with her, and then when Fajr came in, he did his ghusl. So the fact that you delayed in your state of impurity and needs a ghusl doesn't affect your fast. The next one, inhaling unavoidable particles in the air. We said eating and drinking doesn't break the fast. There's always like dust particles in the air. There's always bits around the air. You can't get away from them. If you and it's unavoidable. If you inhale that and take that in, it doesn't break your fast. If someone's cleaning around the house and some dust comes up and it's unavoidable, doesn't break the fast. Where it would, if you have substantial particles, like just to mention a few examples, like bakhur, incense. Do not burn it and inhale it whilst fasting, it'll break your fast. Spray. And we should have mentioned that before. Actually, spraying is something slightly different. Spraying is before. Spraying, do not use deodorants. Do not use any type of spray whilst fasting. If you inhale it, it breaks your fast. Smoke. We didn't mention it before. Smoking yourself breaks your fast and a kafara is required. Penalty is required. But if you inhale the smoke of somebody else, like a passive smoking, it'll break your fast unless it's unavoidable. All of these cases, unless it's unavoidable. So if you inhale something of substance, substantial particles, and it's avoidable, then you've broken the fast. If it's unavoidable, and you happen to be walking, and somebody smoked some cigarettes, and you happen to walk through that, and you couldn't avoid it, then you've not broken your fast. But if it's avoidable, then you've broken your fast. So be careful with sprays. Be careful with burning anything, smoke, inhaling smoke will break the fast unless it's unavoidable. Spraying it, yes. Rubbing it, no. Spraying it, yes. Because some atar now sprayed. You get it sprayed. That'll break the fast. But if you rub it onto your skin, it doesn't break. No. The next one is bleeding. Again, a common error in the minds of people. If you bleed, you break your fast. That's wrong. If you bleed, you break your wudu. In the Hanafi method, if you bleed, you break your wudu. Bleeding does not break the fast. And it doesn't break the fast with anybody. Nobody considers bleeding breaking the fast. Even in weekends, it doesn't break the fast. Even if you need to give blood, for example, and you go to the doctors and you need to give blood, it doesn't break your fast. Because again, nothing's going in. This is coming out. Nothing's going in. So bleeding does not. You can donate blood whilst fasting. If you cut yourself and you're bleeding, it doesn't break. If you need to give blood for a blood test, it doesn't break your fast. The only case where bleeding breaks the fast is a mouth bleed which you swallow. Like gum bleeding that you swallow. If your gums bleed and you swallow the blood, then you've broken your fast. But it has to be substantial amounts. Like if you spit out the blood and the saliva colour is like red and you swallow that, then you've broken your fast. Or it's not, but you can taste blood in your mouth, you've broken your fast. You've broken your fast. So if somebody's like using miswak and he cuts himself, he has bleeding in the gums, make sure you spit it out. Make sure you spit it out. Try and ensure that you don't swallow the blood.
Sorry, so just on that point then, if the saliva is slightly red and it's been swallowed, is it a fast problem?
What do you mean slightly red? Is it? Can you see like streaks of red within it?
No, it's just got a very, very light colour to it.
As long as you can't taste the blood. If you can taste it, if it's light colour but you can taste it, then you've broken the fast. But if it's light colour, like a yellowy colour, and you can't taste it, then your fast is okay. Then your fast is okay. Pretty much the same rule with wudu. If it's light colour, your prayer's okay, your wudu's okay, but if it's ready, then your prayer's not, then your wudu's not okay. Same rule with wudu. There's one difference with wudu though, which is with wudu, if you can taste it, it's light colour, you can taste it, it doesn't break your wudu. But fasting is about what you swallow, and here you swallow blood. Wallahu a'lam. The last point, injecting into the body in the Hanafi madhab does not break your fast. Injecting does not break the fast, even if it's medicinal, even if it's nutritional, it does not break the fast. Like what breaks the fast is through those passages we mentioned, the mouth, the nose, the ear, the rear, and for the woman, the front passage. That's what breaks the fast. So if you need to take a medical injection, a glucose injection, nutritious injection, even though that's beneficial for the body, it does not break the fast. It does not break the fast. Well, I'll just mention this because it's been asked in other places. We said smoking breaks the fast, but somebody's addicted and he struggles. You tell him, put on a patch. Nicotine patch, it goes into the body but not through the passages. That will not break the fast. So a patch would not break the fast because it's not going. But if somebody, for example, has like an intravenous drip through the mouth or the nose, that will break the fast because it's going through the passage. Or if somebody medically had something that went straight into the stomach, directly into the stomach, that would break the fast because that's now going in. That's not going in. But on any other part of the body, it wouldn't break. It wouldn't break. Any questions on that? What was the question? Makeup. What's that? Made up whilst fasting. Makeup whilst fasting. Can you wear makeup, such as an eyeliner? Eyeliner is okay. That's mentioned in the books of fiqh. The kuhal or surma is okay. Even if you taste on the back of your throat, it's okay. Eyeliner is okay. Lipstick and other things like lip balm, they don't break the fast unless something is actually swallowed. The taste as well doesn't break the fast. But just to be careful that it's applied, like for example, if she like licks it and she swallows from that directly, then it will break the fast. But just actually applying like lip balm or lipstick will not break the fast. And likewise, wearing perfume, already mentioned wearing perfume. Spraying perfume will break it because you inhale that, but just rubbing it on will not break the fast. Then we look at makruh acts whilst fasting. Makruh acts whilst fasting. Makruh means you should, yeah, brother, sorry. Well, we haven't come to that. We're going to speak about that in a moment. Makruh acts, we need to finish quickly, so we'll just run through these last points. When we say something is makruh whilst fasting, it does not mean it breaks your fast. It means you try and avoid it. Better to avoid it, but it doesn't break your fast. Tasting something, putting taste onto your mouth does not break it, as long as you don't swallow directly. If you just put it onto the tip of your tongue and spat it out, it doesn't break your fast. Doesn't break your fast. So tasting something does not break the fast. You should try and avoid it though. Whilst you're fasting, you should try and avoid it. And that's one of the issues with toothpaste, because one of the issues with toothpaste, you have a taste in your mouth. All toothpaste will have a taste, so that's one of the problems with toothpaste. Tasting is allowed and it's not disliked in a number of cases. One case being somebody works as a chef and has to taste. But as long as he doesn't swallow it, yeah, don't take it back. Or also a wife who's got a husband who's going to cause her issues if the food's not nice. Yeah, enough said, yeah. Or if you're cooking away and she's going to cause you problems. So tasting is makruh. The second is chewing. Putting food into your mouth doesn't break your fast. Spit it out. If you put something in your mouth, start chewing it, as long as you don't break it up and it starts going down your mouth, spit it out, but it doesn't break your fast. But it's makruh because the possibility of swallowing something, like somebody in Sheffield asked about chewing gum. You started like chewing gum. There's a high possibility you'll break your fast because bits will break from that and you're likely to swallow that. So try and avoid doing that. So putting something in your mouth and start chewing it, it's dangerous. It may well weaken your fast, and you may well probably end up breaking your fast. Again, chewing is allowed. One case that's regularly mentioned, which is you have an infant child who started to eat solids, and the food needs to be chewed up for the baby to eat the food, and there's nobody around who can do that who's not fasting. Then you're allowed to chew. Then you're allowed to chew that food. Kissing or having sexual contact between husband and wife doesn't break the fast. It's makruh. Doesn't break the fast as long as ghusl is not required. As long as ghusl is not required. But it's better to avoid. Better to avoid, particularly in the example, two Sahaba came to the Prophet. One was old, one was young. The old, and they asked about, are we allowed to kiss whilst fasting? The young one, the Prophet told him not to. The elder one, the Prophet told him there's no harm. The elder one, there's little likelihood that will affect his fast. The young one, there's more of a likelihood. A general rule, anything that weakens you and makes it harder for you to fast, try and avoid it whilst fasting. Like people who have go to the gym and go do sports and so on. If you're going to do something that's going to make it hard for you to fast, then try and avoid that or try and minimize it. Don't make the fasting hard for you. Don't make it unnecessarily hard. Then we run through what's okay and it's not makruh. The first one is to use miswak. Using miswak is fine, even if the miswak has a natural flavour. Even if the miswak has a natural flavour to it, it's fine. Even though the miswak may be slightly moist, it's fine. It doesn't break your fast. The issue of toothpaste, try and avoid using toothpaste. It doesn't break your fast, but if you put it into your mouth, there's a high possibility you may swallow something and you've got a taste in your mouth. So try and avoid using toothpaste. Using a toothbrush without toothpaste is fine, because you can use a miswak, and it's recommended to use a miswak whilst fasting throughout the day. So using a toothbrush by itself is fine. Toothpaste, better to avoid. Try to avoid using it, because if you swallow it, or there's a possibility, you put it into your mouth, there's a possibility you swallow it and you've got taste in your mouth. There's no harm in rinsing the mouth and the nose, even separate of wudu. You wake up in the morning, you just want to wash yourself, wash your mouth and nose, no harm. But again, be careful, don't take it to the back. When you wash the mouth and nose, there will always be bits of water in there. You don't need to dry your mouth out. You don't need to completely dry your mouth. What you're required to do is just make sure that you don't swallow water directly. Any little bits of water that are mixed into the saliva, you don't need to worry about them. And you don't need to worry about swallowing saliva. You don't need to worry about swallowing saliva. You're not bringing something from outside, it's already there. Swallowing saliva does not affect your fast. Yeah, quickly, because we're short on time.
You rinse in your mouth, you've got water.
Spit that out, and any little bits that are left and they mix into the saliva, that's... Be careful. Taking a shower is fine whilst you're fasting. Be careful when you take a shower that no water enters into the passages that we mentioned, break it. But there's no issue whatsoever with having a shower whilst fasting. And we've already mentioned using attar, using perfume or scent is fine. The last two things, it is recommended to have a sahur. Be careful with the time. Have a large sahur. It is good to have a large meal in the morning. Try and leave a gap between the sahur time and the fajr time. On your timetable, it will say end of sahri time and beginning of fajr. End of sahri time is the beginning of fajr. The end of you can eat all the way up until fajr. You can't go past fajr, but you can eat all the way up until fajr. However, be careful, be cautious. The Sahaba, they mentioned they would put a gap of 50 ayahs between the sahur and the fajr time. The time it takes to read 50 ayahs. So they leave a gap just to avoid the possibility of making a mistake and falling into the wrong time. So try and have a sahur, try and eat something even if it's small. It's good to have a large meal. It's good to, because it'll help you during the day. And try, the last point, break your fast as soon as the time comes in. Break your fast on something sweet like dates and anything else that's sweet. Try not to have a large meal. Try not to have a large iftar, even though people have parties every single night for iftar, which is a real issue. It's a real problem. And we haven't got time to speak about it because that's one of the major spiritual problems in Ramadan. The very reason why you fast is not to eat food, and people are eating far more than they would normally eat. That's a major issue. The Prophet ﷺ told us in a hadith that those who eat or those who are regularly full in this world will be the ones who will be the most hungry on the Day of Judgment. Those who always eat to fill will be the ones who will be the hungriest on the Day of Judgment. So it's a problem with people always eating to the fill, and the problem is people eat more than their fill, and then when they get to the masjid and they're praying Tarawih and they're complaining about the Imam is reading too long. The problem is not the Imam, it's you've eaten too much. You've eaten too much and you want the Imam to get it over and done with. He's doing what's sunnah, which is to read as much as possible in Ramadan. The point of Ramadan is a long Tarawih, and it's about you standing and doing tahajjud in the night and coming back home and doing khatams of the Quran. That's the point of Ramadan. If you're munching away all night long, you're knocked out. And you missed the real point of Ramadan, which is Layali Ramadan, which is the night of Ramadan. So try and keep it small. Try not to overeat for iftar. It's haram to have large iftar. And that's a bold statement. Al-Ghazali states that it's haram. You're not doing qada of what you missed out during the day. You're not making up for your breakfast and your snack, your early morning snack and your lunch. You're not making up for it. Just have a small meal. Don't forget, it's also recommended to pray Maghrib as soon as time comes in. Don't be delaying your Maghrib. Eat small amounts through the night and try and ensure that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's the most important point of Ramadan. Wallahu a'lam. I don't think we have time. In previous class mentioned better to recite Quran Ramadan than do tafsir. Is the reason behind. You're going to have a session about this Quran in the month of Ramadan. One of the most important aspects of Ramadan is your connection with the Quran. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. It's a month in which Quran is revealed. The Prophet ﷺ, every Ramadan, i'tikaf, mudarasat al-Quran ma'a Jibreel. He would review the whole of the Quran that was revealed to him with Jibreel alayhi salam. So you should go into Ramadan separate of Taraweeh with niyyah of khatamat al-Quran. At the very least, one khatam of Quran that you're going to do. Those who can do more should do as much as possible. Is Laylatul Qadr the night where everything is decreed, or just Shabi Barat? It's Shabi Barat. It's this night, Nis Shaban. It's what we've gone into the night now. This is the night where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Fiha yufraqu kullu amrin hakim. This is the night where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala assigns to all the angels who will carry out everything that's going to happen to you. They'll receive it in this coming year. They'll receive it this night. Your arzaq are distributed this night. Any rizq that will come your way during this year, it's the angel of rizq receives the instruction this night. Life and death, any child that's born in this year, the angels will receive instruction this year. And in a narration it mentions everybody who's going to die in this coming year, the angel of death receives the instructions on this night. That's why it's so important to be in a state of worship tonight. Because if you're in a state of worship, then tafa'ul ma'allahi ta'ala, we have a good opinion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our decree will be in a good state. Our decree is in azal. Eternally Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows, but He knows how you would have been on this night. So it'll match up accordingly. So try, what should we read tonight? Read what's recommended by the Salihin is to read 3 Yasins tonight. Read 3 times Surah Yasin tonight with a niyyah for yourself, a niyyah for the ummah, And there's a third niyyah, I've forgotten the third niyyah, but try and read 3 Yasin, try and do Salat al-Tasbih tonight. Salat al-Tasbih is a prayer by which all sins that you've done before are forgiven. Try and pray Salat al-Tasbih, do Salat al-Awwabin, try and do as much, try and make dua on this night. Dua on this night is accepted by Allah subhanahu. Du'as on this night will not be rejected. But bear in mind, the Prophet made a couple of exceptions. Amongst them he said, Mushahin. Mushahin, somebody who holds grudges against other people. If you've got issues with other people and you're not willing to forgive, Allah subhanahu will not accept du'as on this night. So when you go into this night, we're about to move into this night, and go in with a clean, open heart. Forgive anybody who you've got an issue with. Go into this night with a clean heart, and then Allah subhanahu will accept your dua. He will not accept the du'as of those who hold grudges against other people on this night. So it is a special night. Wallahu a'lam, walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.